The red storms of Mortis Prime had been raging for 3 days straight. Commander Thakmer stood at the edge of the observation deck, watching the crimson lightning tear across the sky like angry claws. The acidic rain hammered against the reinforced glass, each drop carrying enough poison to kill most galactic species in seconds. For the Krolloks, it was just another pleasant evening on their homeworld. Thekma's scales shifted from deep green to satisfied amber as he contemplated his species' superiority. 3,000 years of galactic expansion had proven one simple truth. The Krolloks were unique. They were the only species in the known universe that had evolved on a true death world. Every other civilization they encountered had crawled from comfortable garden worlds where the biggest threat was running out of their favorite food. Commander called his aide, Subcaptain Victor, approaching with the distinctive heavy footsteps of a full-grown Krolloks warrior. The exploration fleet has returned from the Outer Rim. They bring interesting news. Thakmer turned his massive head, yellow eyes focusing on the younger warrior. Speak. They have discovered another death world, sir. Initial scans show conditions that rival our own homeworld. Victila's voice carried a note of excitement that made his throat scales vibrate. Temperature variations from -100 to +200 degrees. Radiation levels that would cook most species. Atmospheric chaos that includes storms larger than most planets. The commander's interest sharpened. In 3 millennia of expansion, the Krolloks had found exactly 17 worlds that even remotely qualified as death worlds. Most were uninhabitable even by their standards. The few that could support life were quickly colonized and turned into fortress worlds for the Empire. Show me the data, Thakmar commanded. The holographic display materialized between them, showing a blue and green world that looked deceptively peaceful from space. The data streams told a different story. Massive hurricanes swirled across the surface. Tectonic activity registered off the charts. The magnetic field fluctuated wildly, allowing deadly radiation to bombard the surface regularly. Magnificent, Thakmor breathed. Have we detected any signs of technological civilization? Primitive radio signals, sir? Sir? Nothing sophisticated. The science team believes they are natural phenomena caused by the planet's magnetic field interactions. Thakmer's laugh rumbled through his chest like distant thunder. Of course. No species could possibly develop technology while fighting. For survival on such a world, we learned that lesson ourselves over millions of years of evolution. The Krolloks had evolved from pack hunters on Mortis Prime, creatures that had learned to work together or die in the endless storms. Their early ancestors had spent centuries hiding in caves, fighting off predators that made nightmares seem friendly. Only the strongest, smartest, and most vicious had survived to reproduce. Prepare the mining fleet, Thakmer ordered. A world like this will contain incredible mineral wealth. The volcanic activity alone suggests massive rare metal deposits. Should we not investigate these radio signals more thoroughly? Even if they are natural phenomena, they might indicate unusual technological opportunities. Thakmer waved a dismissive claw. Victo, in 3,000 years of expansion, we have never encountered another species that survived a true death world. We are unique in the galaxy. The signals are atmospheric interference, nothing more. The young warrior nodded, but something in his posture suggested lingering doubt. What if we are wrong, sir? What if another species did somehow survive such conditions? Possible, Thakmer stated flatly. Look at the galactic community. Zentari evolved on a world with 2 seasons and no predators larger than their. The Qualish developed technology because their biggest environmental challenge was occasional rainfall. Even the warlike hegemony species come from a world where the most dangerous creature is roughly equivalent to our domesticated food. Animals. He gestured toward the storm-lashed landscape outside. We are the products of a world that tried to kill us every single day for millions of years. We learned to hunt in packs because individual survival was impossible. We developed technology. Not for comfort, but for survival. We're apex predators. Victal. We are the galaxy's ultimate survivors. The commander's voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. Any species that could survive a world like this new discovery would be, like us, they would be warriors, predators, survivors. They would have already claimed their place in the galactic hierarchy. Since we have never encountered such a species, logic dictates they do not exist. Victal's scales shifted to respectful blue. Your wisdom guides us, Commander. Shall I inform the mining fleet to prepare for standard Deathworld exploitation? Protocols? Yes, and make sure they understand this is a priority operation. A world with such extreme conditions will be incredibly valuable to the Empire. We can establish another fortress world, perhaps even a new breeding ground for our most elite warriors. As Victo departed to carry out his orders, Thakmer returned his attention to the storm outside. Lightning illuminated the twisted landscape of Mortis Prime, highlighting the jagged mountains and acid-carved valleys that had shaped his people into the galaxy's most feared warriors. Soon, they would claim another world that only they could truly appreciate. Another death world would bow to Krolik's superiority, as was natural and right. After all, they were the only species tough enough to call such places home. The Earth Defense Force cruiser Determination broke through the storm clouds like a silver arrow. Captain Lee Hayen sat in his command chair, watching the tactical display with calm focus. The alien ships hanging in orbit above Earth were impressive in their own way, massive, angular vessels that looked like they were built for war. Rather than exploration? Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the lead alien vessel, reported Communications Officer Park Mira. Her fingers danced across the console as she worked to establish a clear connection. They're using a standard galactic frequency. Translation protocols are online. Lehan straightened his uniform and nodded. Put it through. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a creature that made several bridge crew members take involuntary steps backward. The being was massive, easily 8 feet tall, with dark green scales that looked harder than steel armor. Its yellow eyes held an intelligence that was both alien and unmistakably predatory. When it spoke, its voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Primitive species, the creature began without preamble. You will vacate this system immediately. I am Commander Thakmer of the Krolix Empire. We claim all death worlds by natural right, as we are the only species capable of surviving such hostile environments. Lee Hayen maintained his diplomatic composure despite the casual dismissal. Years of training had prepared him for first contact. Scenarios, though none of the simulations had quite prepared him for something this intimidating. Greetings, Commander Thakmer. I'm Captain Lee Hoon of the Earth Defense Force. This is our home system. We appreciate your interest, but we must ask you to cease your unauthorized mining operations. The alien's laugh was like grinding stone. Several bridge officers winced at the sound. Your home system? It's impossible. No species survives a true death world except the Krolix. You will withdraw your primitive vessels, or we will demonstrate why we are the galaxy's apex predators. Communications Officer Park Mira leaned forward at her station. Captain, I'm detecting massive energy buildups in their weapon systems. They're not bluffing about their capabilities. Lee Hyun kept his eyes on the screen. Commander Thakmer, with respect, I think you may be underestimating us. Humans have called Earth home for millions of years. We've survived ice ages, supervolcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, and more natural disasters than most species can imagine. We're not going anywhere. The Krolix commander's scales shifted from green to a deeper, more aggressive shade. You claim to be native to this death world? Show me proof. What do you call survival? We call conquest. The Krolix have dominated Mortis Prime for 3,000 years. We have built an empire spanning 47 star systems. We're the only true death world species in the galaxy. Perhaps you haven't been looking hard enough, Lee Hayen replied calmly. Earth may not look like much from space, but appearances can be deceiving. Our planet has been trying to kill us in creative ways for so long that we've had to get creative about staying alive. Behind him, Tactical Officer Kim Jae whispered urgently, Captain, their fleet is moving into attack formation. 1 count 12. Heavy cruisers and what looks like a dreadnought-class vessel. 3 ships are seriously outgunned. Noted Lee Hoon said quietly, then raised his voice to address the alien commander. Commander, surely 2 civilized species can resolve this without bloodshed. Perhaps we could arrange a cultural exchange. You could send representatives to our world, and we could send observers to yours. Thukmer's yellow eyes narrowed. You dare suggest that soft-skinned weaklings like yourselves could survive on Mortis Prime? The acid rain alone would dissolve your flesh in minutes. The predators would hunt you for sport. The storms would scatter your atoms across the landscape. And you think your people could handle a Category 5 hurricane? Or a Magnitude 9 earthquake? Or maybe a nice relaxing trip to Antarctica in winter? Li Hyan's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath.
Commander, every species thinks their homeworld is the toughest. Maybe it's time you learned that the galaxy is bigger than your experience suggests. The alien commander's massive.
Form shifted forward, and for a moment it seemed like he might reach through the screen itself. You will have one opportunity to prove your claims, human. We will send a small force to your world's surface. When they demonstrate Krolik's superiority, you will acknowledge our rightful claim to this system. And if your people find Earth more challenging than expected? Possible, Thakmer stated flatly. But if by some miracle your world presents actual dangers to Krolik's warriors, we will, reconsider our position. Li Hun glanced at his tactical officer, who nodded grimly. Earth's defense systems were ready, but avoiding a fight would be preferable. Very well, Commander. But we insist on sending our own people to observe your forces. Fair exchange, agreed. Prepare to receive our shock troops. They will demonstrate why the Kroliks are the galaxy's ultimate survivors. The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Park Mira was the first to speak. Captain, are we really going to let them land troops on Earth? Li Hyan smiled for the first time since the conversation began. Officer Park, these aliens think they're the toughest species in the galaxy. They're about to learn that humans didn't conquer our world by being polite. Alert Earth Defense Command.
How?
Tell them we have visitors coming, and they should prepare a proper welcome. The storm clouds below seemed to swirl with anticipation. The Krolik's drop pods screamed through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars. Inside, Pod 7, elite shock trooper Vashka felt the familiar thrill of combat rushing through his veins. His massive frame was pressed against the reinforced seating as the pod's heat. Shields glowed white-hot from atmospheric entry. 30 seconds to impact announced the pod's automated system. Around him, his squad of 5 elite warriors checked their weapons one final time. Each Krolik soldier stood over 7 feet tall and weighed nearly 400 pounds of pure muscle and bone. Their natural armor could stop most conventional weapons, and their claws could tear through steel plating. Remember, Vashka growled to his squad. These humans claim to be Deathworld survivors. We will show them what real Deathworld warriors look like. Quick demonstration of superiority, then they surrender. Standard intimidation protocol. The pod slammed into the mountainous terrain with earth-shaking force. Vashka's enhanced physiology barely registered the impact that would have killed most galactic species. The pod's doors blew open with explosive charges, and the Krolik squad emerged into the Earth environment. The first thing that hit him was the cold. The temperature was nearly 40 degrees below zero, with winds that howled like hunting beasts. Ice crystals struck his scales like tiny bullets, and the thin air made even his powerful lungs work harder. These were conditions that would incapacitate most civilized species within minutes. Acceptable environmental challenge, Vashka reported into his CUM system. Proceeding with mission parameters. His thermal sensors immediately locked onto human heat signatures moving through the terrain. The readings confused him at first. The humans seemed to be moving with impossible grace across ice and snow that challenged even Krolik's mobility. They appeared to be using the harsh conditions to their advantage somehow. Contact front, Vashka roared, raising his plasma rifle. As a human figure appeared from behind a boulder. The human was smaller than expected, maybe 6 feet tall and probably weighing less than half what a Krolik's warrior weighed. The way he moved was wrong. Instead of the clumsy, stumbling Vashka expected from a species facing superior opponents, this human flowed like water across the dangerous terrain. Sergeant Kim Jae, Earth Defense Force, the human called out calmly. You're trespassing on sovereign territory. Please power down your weapons and prepare to be escorted to a safe area. Vashka's laugh rumbled through his chest. Surrender now, soft skin, and we will make your death quick. The humans' response was immediate and devastating. Kim Jae's weapon spat coherent energy that struck Vashka's armor with surprising force. But that was just the beginning. More humans materialized from positions that should have provided no cover for their smaller frames. Within seconds, the mountainside erupted into chaos. The humans fought with a fluid adaptability that turned every environmental hazard into a weapon. They disappeared into ice caves that Vashka sensors couldn't penetrate, then emerged from thermal vents that should have cooked them alive. Squad 2, report, Vashka commanded, into his cum as plasma fire exploded around him. Under heavy fire came the response. These humans are using the terrain like they were born in it. They're moving through areas that should be impassable. Vashka watched in growing disbelief as a human soldier used a collapsing ice shelf as cover, riding it down the mountainside while firing accurately at Krolik's positions. Another human had somehow positioned himself inside a steam vent, using the superheated gases as concealment while picking off warriors with precision shots. Impossible, Vashka muttered. How are they surviving in these conditions? Came when he tried to pursue Kim Jae across a frozen stream. The ice that supported the human's weight cracked and splintered under Vashka's massive bulk. As he struggled to maintain footing, Kim Jae moved across the same surface like it was solid ground. You're fighting the environment instead of working with it, Kim Jae called out during a brief lull in the combat. That's your first mistake. We are Kroliks, Vashka roared back. We conquered the storms of Mortis Prime. We are the galaxy's ultimate survivors. Maybe on your world, Kim Jae replied, and Vashka could hear something like amusement in his voice. But this is Earth. We've been dealing with weather that changes its mind about how to kill us. Every 5 minutes for our entire evolutionary history. The battle continued for 2 hours. 2 hours of the most frustrating combat Vashka had ever experienced. The humans used every aspect of their deadly environment as a weapon. They triggered avalanches to block Krolik's advances. They lured warriors into areas where the thin air and extreme cold sapped their strength. They even used the planet's magnetic field fluctuations to disrupt Krolik's communications and targeting systems. Most shocking of all, the humans seemed to be enjoying themselves. They moved through conditions that challenged even Krolik's physiology. With the casual confidence of a species that had never known any other way of life, all units fall back to extraction points. Vashka finally commanded, his voice carrying disbelief that he would never admit to feeling, as the Krolik's warriors retreated to their drop pods. Kim Jae's voice followed them across the mountainside. Next time, maybe try calling ahead. We could have saved everyone some time. For the first time in Krolik's military history, their elite shock troops retreated from a planetary surface. As his pod lifted off, Vashka stared down at the death world below and realized that perhaps the Kroliks were not as unique as they had always believed. Dr. Cho Yuna pulled up the comparative analysis on her workstation aboard the research vessel Discovery. The holographic display showed 2 planets side by side, and the data was almost impossible to believe. Beside her, Krolik's xenobiologist Morthic examined the same information with growing amazement, his yellow eyes reflecting the glow of the data streams. Your species evolved on this world. Morthic's translated voice carried genuine awe. His massive frame leaned forward to study the Earth data more carefully. These conditions, they exceed even Mortis Prime's hostility index. Yuna nodded grimly, pulling up additional files that made the Krook scientist's scales shift to a disturbed purple color. Earth doesn't just have consistent threats like your homeworld, Morthic. Our planet actively tries to kill us in new ways constantly. Ice ages that last for thousands of years. Supervolcanic eruptions that can block out the sun for decades. Asteroid impacts that wipe out entire species overnight. But how did your species achieve such technological advancement while fighting for survival? Morthic asked, his voice carrying the confusion of someone whose entire worldview was being challenged. We didn't just survive our world, Yuna replied, bringing up historical data. We conquered it so thoroughly that we had to create artificial challenges to stay sharp. We invented sports where we throw ourselves out of aircraft for fun. We climb mountains that can kill us just because they're there. We race vehicles at speeds that would be fatal if we made a single mistake. The Krolix scientist stared at footage of humans engaging in extreme sports. His translator struggled with concepts that had no equivalent in Krolix culture. You, ... do these things voluntarily? For entertainment? When your world stops trying to kill you every day, you have to find other ways to keep your survival instincts. Sharp Yuna explained. Turn the act of staying alive into an art form. Meanwhile, in the diplomatic quarters of the Joint Research Station, a very different conversation was taking place. Commander Thakmer sat across from Lieutenant Colonel Beek Su, studying human military doctrine with the focused intensity of a predator learning about new prey. What he was discovering challenged everything the Krolix understood about proper military organization. You allow individual soldiers to adapt strategies in real time, Thakmer asked, his scales shifting to confused yellow. Without direct orders? From command this seems ... chaotic. Beek-Su smiled, pulling up tactical recordings from the recent skirmish. Rigid doctrine gets you killed on a world that changes its mind about how to kill you every day, Commander. Earth taught us that survival means adapting faster than the threat can evolve. The recordings showed human soldiers making split-second decisions that turned apparent defeats into victories. They improvised weapons from environmental hazards, used terrain features that weren't even marked on tactical maps, and coordinated with a fluid grace that seemed almost telepathic. On Mortis Prime, our warriors learned 17 different combat formations, Thakmer said slowly. Each formation has been perfected over centuries of warfare. We believe this was the pinnacle of military efficiency. 17 formations for every possible situation? Beek-Su asked. What happens when you encounter situation number 18? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Thakmer's massive head turned to study the human officer with new respect. We ... adapt the closest existing formation to meet the new threat. And by the time you've adapted, the threat has probably changed again, Beek-Su observed. Doesn't give us that luxury. We learn to improvise before we learn to walk. Back in the research lab, Yuna was showing Morthic historical footage of human disasters. Tsunamis that wiped out entire coastlines. Hurricanes that leveled cities. Earthquakes that reshaped geography overnight. But what fascinated the Krolix scientist wasn't the scale of destruction. It was how humans responded to it. You rebuild, Morthic observed, his voice carrying wonder. Every time your world destroys what you have built, you simply ... rebuild. Often in the exact same locations. Sometimes we build it better, Yuna said, bringing up images of earthquake-resistant architecture and flood management systems. Earth taught us that you can't prevent disasters, but you can learn from them. Every catastrophe becomes a lesson for surviving the next one. But why not simply avoid the dangerous areas? Morthic asked. Surely your species could have settled in safer regions. Yuna laughed, a sound that made the Krolix scientist translator emit confused static. Morthic, there are no safe regions on Earth. Our ancestors learned that lesson about 2 million years ago. You can either run from danger your whole life, or you can learn to dance with it. The implications of this conversation were spreading throughout both fleets. Krolix warriors who had spent their entire lives believing they were the galaxy's ultimate survivors were discovering that another species had not only matched their achievement, but possibly exceeded it. Humans who had assumed they were alone in the universe were learning that somewhere among the stars, another species understood the peculiar pride that came from thriving in conditions that would destroy lesser beings. In the command center, both Captain Li Hian and Commander Thakmer were receiving reports from their respective science teams. Data was forcing both species to reassess fundamental assumptions about their place in the galaxy. Commander Li Hian said during their daily diplomatic briefing, "It seems we have more in common than either of us initially believed." Thakmer's scales shifted to a thoughtful blue. Indeed, Captain, perhaps the galaxy is large enough for 2 apex predator species. Neither of them yet realized how soon that theory would be tested. The Devourer swarm emerged from the darkness between stars like a living nightmare. Trillions of biomechanical entities moved in perfect coordination, consuming entire worlds and leaving nothing but empty husks floating in space. The first reports came from the Outer Rim colonies, entire star systems simply vanishing from galactic communications networks. Commander, Thuckmer stood beside Captain Lehine on the bridge of their hastily combined flagship, the Deathworlds. Wrath. Through the reinforced viewports, they watched the approaching swarms stretch across space like a plague of locusts. Individual entities were small, but they moved in formations that blocked out entire star fields. Galactic Council forces lasted 6 hours, Lehane reported grimly, reading the latest intelligence reports. The Zentari Third Fleet was completely destroyed. The Qualish defense stations didn't even slow them down. Softworlders, Thekmer growled, but there was no satisfaction in his voice. They never learned to face true threats, but this swarm consumes everything, even Deathworld species. The tactical display showed the grim mathematics of the situation. The Devourer swarm numbered in the trillions and was growing larger as it consumed each world. The combined human and Krolix fleets numbered barely 10,000 vessels. By every reasonable calculation, they were about to witness the end of galactic civilization. Admiral Parkman, report from the human strike wings, Lehane called out. A young human officer appeared on the communications screen. Captain, we've identified what appear to be command nodes scattered throughout the swarm. Large biomechanical structures that seem to coordinate the smaller entities. If we can disrupt them, the swarm loses coordination, Thekmer finished, his tactical mind immediately grasping the implications. But reaching those nodes means flying through the heart of their formation. Suicide mission. Only if you're flying alone, Lehane said quietly. But what if we combine our approaches? Krolix vessels as shields, human ships as the spear? The plan that emerged was insane by any conventional military standard. Krolix dreadnoughts would advance directly into the swarm's heart, their massive hulls absorbing punishment that would vaporize conventional warships. Human vessels would use the larger ships as mobile cover, striking at the command nodes with surgical precision before retreating to safety. Krolix heavy assault vessels advanced to engagement range, Thakmer commanded. Show these Devourers what Deathworld survivors look like. The first wave of contact was devastating. The swarm entities swarmed over the Krolix dreadnoughts like angry insects, their biomechanical weapons tearing at armor that had been forged in the storms of Mortis Prime. But the Krolix vessels held, their crews fighting with the stubborn determination of a species that had never learned to surrender. Human strike wings, execute precision strikes on target nodes. Lehane ordered. Captain Omin led the first wave of human fighters through the chaos. His squadron moved through the battle space like schools of fish, using the swarm's own numbers. Against them, when entities clustered too thickly, the humans would vanish into the maze of larger vessels, merging elsewhere to strike at undefended targets. Direct hit on Node 7, Omin reported, his voice calm, despite flying through conditions that would panic most pilots. The entities in this sector are losing coordination. The battle evolved into a deadly dance. Krolix vessels served as unbreakable anvils, their crews embracing the kind of punishment that would have broken lesser species. Meanwhile, human ships flowed around them like deadly quicksilver, striking at weak points and vanishing before the swarm could respond effectively. Sergeant Major Konghyo led the most audacious part of the assault, boarding actions against the largest swarm vessels. His Marines moved through the biomechanical corridors like they were exploring dangerous caves on Earth, adapting to alien environments with the fluid grace of a species that had learned to treat every new challenge as just another puzzle to solve. Swarm command ship secured, Konghyo reported from deep within, an entity the size of a small moon. Were turning their own weapons against them. The tide of battle began to turn when both species deployed their most devastating weapons. Simultaneously, Krolix world crackers, massive weapons designed to shatter planets, combined with human relativistic kill vehicles moving at significant fractions of light speed. The swarm's central control clusters were obliterated in displays of coordinated destruction that left the surviving galactic observers speechless. Final command node destroyed, reported Lieutenant Colonel Biksu from his position coordinating the assault. Swarm entities are losing all coordination across the battle space. Remaining swarm entities, cut off from their controlling intelligence, began to turn on each other in confused frenzy. Within hours, the greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced was reduced to scattered debris floating in the void. When the last swarm entity fell silent, Thakmer and Li-Hyun stood together on the bridge, watching the aftermath of their impossible victory. The Krolyk's commander extended his massive scaled hand, and the human captain clasped it without hesitation. "The galaxy needs guardians," Li-Hyun said quietly. "Species that can face the darkness others cannot even imagine." "The Deathworld Compact," Thakmer agreed, his voice carrying the weight of newfound purpose. "To species, one mission, to protect those who cannot protect themselves." Above them, the stars shone brighter, no longer threatened by the darkness that had sought to consume them all. The galaxy had learned that its greatest defenders were not the civilized species that had never known true hardship, but the survivors who had been forged in the crucibles of worlds that refused to let them live easily.